You're listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series.
Very good morning to Supreme Court Judge David Ashton Lewis.
Well, good morning to you, Colin, and good morning, as always, to everyone listening, including my sons Somerset and Lynn. I'm still waiting to get other names, so I'll just say good morning to all the thousands of other listeners. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for the courteous way that you respond to us.
Well, we're going to focus on the United States of America today,
Yes.
and we've had a debate in recent times,
Yes.
and it hasn't gone well for certain sides.
It hasn't gone well for both.
I don't think it
really.
went well for both
No.
either. But I'd just like to hear what your thoughts are around Joe Biden. I've heard it characterised as we've got a choice between a megalomaniac and a geriatric.
Yes, and a lying megalomaniac. I think it's just such a sad indictment of American politics. If these two are the best that can be put forward, the United States should give up.
Where are the youth?
Pardon?
Where are the youth?
Absolutely. I mean, there are some brilliant young people, but Joe Biden, sadly, look, he was a brilliant senator. He came to Australia in the 70s, and he was articulate and good, and he loved us. Well, he loves Australia. I mean, he was a major pusher for AUKUS,
Yes,
involving Australia, but he simply, it can't be hidden. And I heard a commentator say how stupid they were to agree to this debate because it was a forum on which the minders couldn't edit, couldn't cut things out. He had to face the American public and the world. And if you looked at him at times when he had stopped talking, he looked blank.
He lost his way.
He lost his way. When his wife came to help him, he looked like, someone, who are you? And he needed help. She had to help him down the stairs at the end of it to go the 5 steps to thank the moderators. I'm surprised that it happened, but he certainly looked incompetent, not so much in his skill, but incompetent to be the leader of the free world.
Sure.
He looked.
And look, we again, there's a certain line in the sand, and I think it's different with all of us as to when that line appears.
Yes.
And we've seen a lot of it here with our volunteers, and that because a lot of our volunteers come to us as they retire.
Yes.
And I'll use an example. One of the ladies who was very, very good on computers in her earlier days, but needed guardrails and checklists, and I click this and I do that and started with about 10 pages of what you have to do to get something working.
Yes.
In her final days of working here, could only do about half a page worth of dot points, and that is just as the mind ages. You've got to expect that happens to an American president also.
Of course. I mean, he just simply showed that he must not stand. Now, my understanding is that after the debate and listening to Vice President Kamala Harris saying, look, sure, he didn't do well, but he knows it, he's good, that he's not good, and not to be the commander-in-chief. And so I think that, well, I understand that at the end of the debate, senior Democrats were really saying to him, Joe, you've got to step down. And he was adamant, I'm not stepping down. And Hunter Biden, his son, who he takes great advice from, made it clear, my father is not stepping down. Now, over the weekend, they met at Camp David, and that's the presidential retreat.
Yes.
And there was discussions, and I saw some of the news coming out of that it looks like he is heading towards, all right, I'll step down, because I don't think he can win the election, given the way he portrayed him. He's incompetent. Now, that means the person who wins it is Donald Trump. Now, I didn't mind Trump coming into power in 2016 to see if he would do things differently. Well, he did do things differently, but he did them disgracefully differently. And while Biden, in my view, may not be fit intellectually or physically because of dementia, Trump is not fit morally. He's not fit intellectually either. He's as thick as two short planks, and he makes a great
Well,
show.
tell us what you really think, David.
Makes a great show. Look how he was the first president in his first term to meet Kim Jong-un and step over the line, and he went into North Korea.
Look,
Remember that? And
I do.
And then he came back, and he had the greatest opportunity to change the relationship, and ultimately nothing came
It was
of it.
much ado about nothing,
So
wasn't it?
I think what he is, he's a bit of a windbag. He says things that people say, well, great, but he doesn't seem to carry through on it. I've never felt comfortable that he stirred up the January 6th riots. I have never felt comfortable that there wasn't doctoring of the 2020 election results, and I see now that there is some movement in looking at, yes, they were doctored. And I'm particularly interested to see that the Supreme Court only 2 days ago has ruled that he is immune from certain prosecution. Now, I don't mind that.
Sure.
But my point is that any clear-thinking American, whether you're Democrat or Republican, would be standing back saying these two men are not fit to run the United States of America for the next 4 years.
Now, I know that I've mentioned to you there's a brand new documentary on Netflix, and I know both you and I have said yes, but we know the history of it all. It's on Nazi Germany and its rise. And I couldn't stop but watch one of Donald Trump's rallies where he's let's make America great again, and then I draw the parallel of
Nuremberg rallies,
making Germany great again, and then I see someone who's making all sorts of weird, unbelievable statements, and they are just heartstringy, pluck, make sure that we get people's favour at any costs, whether there's any substance behind the statements whatsoever.
Yep.
And then we go over here and it's similar.
Well, that's the key, and that's the disgraceful state of politics in my latter years, yours,
Sure.
and now, that you feel you want to go to them and say, I couldn't give a damn about Labor policy. I know you're decent people and you believe that your policy is aimed to the betterment of Australia. I couldn't give a damn about coalition policy. Because where you will disappoint me, whether it's the US or here, you don't seem to be able to put your policy aside and say our first concern is Australia. And I know they'd say,
I agree.
Oh, well, because I'm a Labor has the best policies for Australia. I'd say, no, you don't.
What policies?
Yeah,
Even Liberal. Show me a policy of substance that you currently have, and there aren't really
Well,
any.
you would hear Jim Chalmers saying, look how brilliant we are and tax cuts and all that. But inflation is going up. And if it keeps going up and there's an interest rate rise in about a month's time,
You're going to be very unpopular.
Well, all the point about it's gone. It's wiped out. So I don't want to see. I'm sick of seeing politicians defend their policy and decry. And you're seeing it with the nuclear and renewables.
Absolutely.
And I would like to see both Dutton, Littleproud, and I've gone blank on this current useless minister in the Labor government who just will not even countenance debate. My point is, if you truly care for Australia, there should be proper debate and discussion around nuclear. But Chris Bowen, all I ever see from you is derision, deriding and speaking like Dutton's got two heads.
Look, the one for me, moreover, is the fact that when we look at it now, once upon a time there were two major differences between parties. We've got to make sure that workers' rights are upheld and under control. And, well, that's done now. That's complete.
It is, because it's destroyed manufacturing in the country.
Well, look, we now have an award, and that award makes sure that fairness and equity
so it should be.
is
Yep.
complete. And the other side of the fence was for the employers. Now that we've moved so close together
Yes,
now,
that's
we've
good.
completed the task of making sure employees are looked after, and we've also completed the task of looking after business, and it's a balance.
Yes.
Now all I've got left is picking at each other and
Yes.
and character attacks, and that's all it seems to be to me.
And it's a shameful state of governing this good country.
Correct.
And look at this young 28-year-old Muslim senator from Western Australia. She crosses the floor. Now, I've always believed, no matter what party you're in, you should be able to vote with your conscience.
Sure.
Now, sure, you can do that, provided you go to the Labor leader and the caucus. It's raised in the caucus, which is a meeting of all the Labor members, House of Reps and Senate, or you go to the Liberal Party room and say, I would like to be able to have a conscience vote. And it has happened in the past, and they're given it. But you can't do what she did. There's clear rules, not Labor Party or Liberal, they're parliamentary rules, that if you cross the floor unannounced, you lose your place in the parliament. Now, Albanese has not let that happen to her, but I see she's interviewed on Sunday in a program where she says, I'll do it again.
So let me ask you this, David,
Yes.
and let's move back to first principles. Obviously, this person was voted into the position she currently is in by her constituents back in her in the electorate. Oh, it was a Senate seat, so it's the majority
I
of
think she needed about 70,000 votes,
Gotcha.
I think.
So, in essence, those 70,000 people, and let's just take that as a rough number, do you think supported her crossing the floor, or was it her own personal opinion
I
that
think
she
it was
walked
her own
across there?
personal view, and you raise another valid point. That's why your first duty, if you're in the House of Reps or the Senate, you are a representative. And so you should go to many of your constituents as you can get and say, look, I'm Muslim, I'm an Australian, and I believe that there should be a Palestinian state. My party has held off on this along with the coalition. I think that's wrong. Would you support me support me in me crossing the floor? And you should really try to find out what those who have voted you in, their attitude is, because I'd say Senator Payman, it's not you, it's who you represent. Now, here's the problem to me of people who come from cultures who have not understood the development of parliamentary party system. To hear her speak, she's a very bright woman, and I'm quite happy for her to be a Muslim. We've got 3 Muslims, I think, in Parliament. That's good. You know, I think that. But if the policy is not at this stage, and I did hear her say she totally agreed with the right of Israel to exist, and that it's a two-state solution, and she did not see the words from the river to the sea as meaning the destruction of Israel. And I thought, well, we want to hear more of you. You're good. But she must understand, you're a member of the Labor Party. You surely understood the rules of the Labor Party and the rules of the Parliament.
Well, don't forget the people who put you there in the first place. If they don't carry that view, or the majority of them don't carry that view,
Your view,
you shouldn't be representing them.
No, she can represent them and accept, look, I have a different view, but they've put me there, and she would have given her speeches as she was going around. The fact that I believe in a Palestinian state and you haven't got the majority, as long as you say, well, while I believe, look, the best example of this was Penny Wong in about 2016. Penny Wong is a gay or lesbian woman. She has a partner. They adopted, or I think her partner gave birth, and she clearly believes in gay rights. But the Labor Party back then did not support gay marriage. She voted with the Labor Party. No, we won't support gay marriage. And, she's a highly respected politician on both sides of the House. And so she went against her own conscience because she said, well, the party's conscience is not mine. I must support the party.
Nice, and that's exactly it. And on a smaller scale, as the compromises go, the people who voted you in there, also, you should be representing the majority of their views.
That's the majority, and I believe that as a first-time senator, she should be given a chance.
Oh, sure.
But she should be told, because she said if my conscience is against party policy again, I'll cross the floor again. I think she should be told, if you do that, you'll be expelled from the party.
You can become
and we will ask the President of the Senate to expel you from Parliament. And so we'll get another senator. You can't have it your way. And I think this is the problem with people who come from different cultures and don't really fully... I mean, she's certainly bright, but I'd love to ask her, do you fully understand the Westminster parliamentary system?
And we get
this has never been in the Middle East. It's only in one place, Israel, and it's only been there since 1948.
Sure.
Yep.
Look, we have it everywhere. We have it at council elections. We have it at state elections. I must admit it. When I was living in New South Wales in the last election I attended, someone walked up to me and said, a vote for me is a vote for lower rates. And I'm looking at her going, the state government governs that, not you, but sure.
You collect them.
Yeah. Look.
But here's the paucity again of our system. The Local Government Act is a state act, and that minister controls everything. Now, you will remember a few years ago when there were questions about the Gold Coast City Council and Tom Tate. I can remember pressure being, direct them to do this. And I can remember hearing that minister at the time saying, no, I can't do that. We'll leave it to Tom Tate. And I found myself saying, no, you can direct, you can intervene. You are in charge of local government.
Yes.
And so what we've got is a problem. It's like the appointment of Janet Young as governor of the state of Queensland, when Anastasia Palaszczuk said, I've got no choice. I must listen. This is when Dr. Young was the chief health officer here during COVID, and Anastasia Palaszczuk said, I've got no choice. I must follow the advice of Dr. Young. No, you're wrong. She's an advisor. She's elected by no one, whereas you are.
Yes.
You can listen to her and say, I'm sorry, we're not going to do it.
Look, it's funny, isn't it? And we just accept a lot of these things as gospel now, just for the fact that
they're ignorant.
We don't know the entire system and its ins and outs.
And we've got people administering that system.
Yes.
Called the parliamentary system, who don't fully know it.
And look, even the media nowadays, whether they don't know it or don't question it properly.
No, they don't know it.
Yes.
It's not about Colin. I can tell you, 95% of journalists would not know the depth of what they're writing on.
Yes.
Look at that very good journalist. What was her name? Who, she wasn't representing herself as a director in the ABC, but said at this book meeting, Australia is a racist nation. What's her name?
I do know that. I can see the lady's face.
I've gone blank. I can see her face.
Yes.
But what an appalling statement to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are anything but a racist nation.
Yes.
You can't stop individuals. You'll come across some individuals who'll say, I hate Aboriginals. I wouldn't do anything for them. They're lazy, whatever. But you've got government and policy that, I repeat again, that over the last 52 years has applied $1,512 billion for 881,000 people. And in every budget, between $32 and $40 billion towards... That's hardly racist.
No, not at all.
If we were racist, they'd be screaming from the rooftops. Don't give these people anything more. They have to join us, or they can stay in the outback. Now, anyone who would say that I'd say, well, you're a racist.
Absolutely.
Because these people are Australians.
Yes.
And in many instances, they are disadvantaged. But it has to be a dual thing. We have to keep giving finances, and they have to accept that you can't live in a way now that doesn't compromise and doesn't work with modern parliamentary democracy.
So, as we have talked about in the past, and we had D-Day last week, and I had a chat to my son and his friends. I've talked to my son about politics.
Yes.
And then applied that out to friends. I wouldn't call it the lack of it's not interest, because they've shown some interest, but because of the carry-on, because of the way they behave, because they can see right through they're just going to sit there and be polar opposites or pull this poor person apart.
Yep.
No interest in politics whatsoever, and that is our gen.
Well, do you
right
blame them?
No, I don't.
Look,
I get very frustrated with it.
I've always been interested in politics, and I find party politics now appalling.
Sure.
And it's the killing of interest, because they're both partisan, and they both can't accept that there's value in what the other side, again, for the nuclear debate. Why isn't there agreement that something like this? Labor says we don't agree with it. We think renewables is the way to go. But there is questioning about, can renewables ever provide, that is wind and solar, can they ever provide reliable baseload power? We think yes. But let's get the opposing view to show us, if we're wrong, show us we're wrong. But what you get is arrogant, dismissive.
Do you know what it reminds me of, David? It's just come to me.
Yeah, right.
Remember the debates at uni, and you'd sit there,
yes.
and you'd have people sitting in the background watching the debate with keen interest.
Yes.
They didn't speak, and it was always a really
polite,
zesty. No, it was a polite, could be zesty affair.
Well, for sure.
To me nowadays, modern politics represents this. Two sides trying to debate, and then you've got the entire crowd out here, which represents the media, just yelling and screaming at each other.
Well, yeah,
and it just seems to be this
not
continual
trying to debate.
No, they're
policy
not.
is being formed.
Yes.
I've never heard Mr. Bowen talk. Look, while I'm completely against, and the Labor Party is completely against nuclear power generation, we should talk about it. We should get panels of pro and of con and let the Australian public know. Because, Mr. Bowen, ultimately you only occupy where you are because the Australian public have elected you to be the member of a certain area, and through your expertise you are now have been chosen by the leader of the Labor Party to be a minister. So your responsibility is not to just dismiss anything that doesn't agree with your Labor policy.
All right. Well, look, we've gone all over the page there today, David. We've tackled the woes of the world. I note that the common theme here when we talk about woke and media and politics is it's a god-awful mess.
I think you're right, because it is an awful mess. Because people are so biased now, they're not willing to see there might be validity in the other side. And the worst contributor to that is wokeism.
There you go.
I'm awake to it. Anyone else who doesn't agree with this, but you're not awake, you're a homophobe or you're an Islamophobe.
Yeah, but that's the bit that frustrates me. There is no intelligent debate or discussion. It is just throw an insult, and that'll stop this bloke speaking at me.
Yes, and you know the way to deal with it is that it's up to us, because ultimately Bowen, Dutton, everyone, they represent us, and we can exercise power every 3 years and say to Bowen, goodbye.
Correct.
And so we've got to start thinking as a people and start saying, no, I don't want a 16-year-old girl who's got Asperger's and autistic being the spokesperson for climate change. I come across people that say, I agree with climate change, I don't agree with the way it's being addressed. I've not heard anyone say there's no such thing as climate change. Climate's always changed.
It has. All right, David, in summing up.
Well, I get off the soapbox now, and I will say we must engender in our society, as we've seen in the debates, we've seen in governance, we've seen in the climate position, we must get out of a single eye-focused way and start encouraging rational, honest debate.
David Ashton-Ellis, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Colin Bolevsky, thank you very much for having me.
You've been listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series. Support local online content and become a financial supporter today at 4CRB.com.